Picture this. You're the only white boy in one of Memphis's most dangerous gangs. You've proven yourself time and time again. But then you get caught lacking on camera and Pooh Shiesty himself kicks you out of Choa gang. That's exactly what happened. 2. White Grape. And homie, this story is absolutely wild. See, most people think gang loyalty runs deep, but what happens when your skin color makes you expendable? White Grape went from being Chopa gang's most trusted shooter to getting personally expelled by Pooh Shiesty after one bad day. And what he did next
also known as rapper Pooh Shiesty, will remain in jail for
will shock. We're talking about a dude who felt so disrespected by his own leader that he ended up catching a body just trying to prove he wasn't soft. This ain't just some street tail gang. This is about how racial politics work even in the trenches, and how Pooh Shiesty's decision to cut White Grape loose led to deadly consequences. From the robbery video that made Pooh Shiesty react to White Grape's deadly comeback attempt, this whole situation exposes the ugly truth about loyalty in the streets. So, if you want to understand how Pooh Shiesty's leadership decision turned a white boy from Memphis into a murder suspect, and why the gang leader had to make the hardest choice of his career, you better stick around until the end, because this story gets crazier with every detail. Hit the sub and like button, and let's get into it.
I'm not a rap, alright? If y'all think this on some rap beef shit, or we rapping or going back and forth, I'm through. I retired. I ain't making no more.
Before we get into White Grape's story, we got to understand where Choa gang came from and what they're really about. See, Pooh Shiesty didn't just wake up one day and decide to start a gang. This crew was born out of necessity in the dangerous streets of South Memphis. Growing up in the Cane Creek projects, Pooh Shiesty was surrounded by violence from day one. His pops, who went by Mob Boss, was deep in the streets and even founded a record label called Mob Ties Records. But that street life caught up with him quick. He got locked up for being an accessory to murder when PA was just a kid. That's the environment that shaped young Pooh Shiesty. When Pooh hit high school at Central High, he started linking up with other young hustlers who were trying to get money by any means necessary. The main homie was Big 30 from Whitehaven, plus cats like Little Hank, Antwop, and a few others. They called themselves Choa Gang because they stayed strapped with them choppers, and the name just stuck. Now let me break down the main members for y'all. You got Big 30, who's Pooh's right-hand man and was actually the first one to get signed. 2. A major deal with Moneybag Yo. Then there's Big Scar, who's Pooh's cousin and a founding member of Double R Gang. This dude was strictly in the streets until he randomly blew up off a reaction video. Choa Gang, Hank is locked up right now for attempted murder. Allegedly shot a car and paralyzed somebody in a case of mistaken identity. And Choa_ is down for murder and 2 attempts. These ain't no regular street dudes, fam. These are certified killers who built their reputation through violence and fear in Memphis. But here's where it gets interesting. They let a white boy into their circle, and that decision would come back to haunt them. To understand Choa Gang's beef, you got to understand Memphis street politics. This city is divided by train tracks that literally separate different hoods and gangs. You got North Memphis, South Memphis, and East Memphis, and each side has their own sets they've been wearing for years. Chopa Gang, being from the South, naturally had problems with crews from the North. The main beef that put them on the map was with EBG. That's the crew that includes E-Jizzle and them. This beef goes way back to high school when Pooh Shiesty and E-Jizzle went to Central High together, but they were from opposite sides of the tracks. The beef really escalated when Pooh dropped Back in Blood with Lil Durk. On that track, he was talking directly to EBG, saying, "Yeah, you know who took that from you? Come, get it Back in Blood." He was referring to a specific incident where Choa Gang allegedly robbed EBG's spot and took their guns. That line wasn't just rap. It was a real threat. Interview. EBG responded with their own
I'm outside, cuz. I want you to just say what you just said on that status in my face. Come on, just do that. Just do that for me, please. Where you at? Get them on here, y'all. I ain't gonna lie though, on some real shit, I gotta keep it so 100. I ain't never like you, cuz. I ain't gonna lie, I ain't never like your bitch ass.
See, I try to give you a pass with choice, good.
Whopping 30 trying to give your bitch ass a pass. I never liked you. You know I ain't like you.
Mix wearing CGK hoodies. That stands for Chop, a gang killer. They even got Quando Rondo in the video to throw shots at Lil Durk. This beef got so real that E-Jizzle ended up getting shot 3 times in the arm just days after dropping his diss track. But before the EBG beef, PA had problems with Big Boogie from North Memphis. That situation got so heated that Big Boogie's concert in Mississippi got shot up. Over 50 shots fired. 2 people died, including Bogey's friend Jasmine, who was on stage with him. That's the level of violence we're talking about with these Memphis beefs. Oh my God. Now, let's talk about White Grape. Real name Kenny? This dude was different from the jump. Growing up white in South Memphis, he had to prove himself every single day just to survive. While other kids his age were worried about homework and video games, White Grape was in the trenches trying to earn respect from dudes who automatically assumed he was soft because of his skin color. White Grape went to Central High School with Pooh Shiesty and the rest of Showa Gang. Even back then, he was known for having girls lined up like a buffet. The dude had serious game, but more importantly, he was willing to put in work when it came to the streets. See, White Grape wasn't just some suburban kid trying to act hard. He was really from the struggle. Really about that life. But in Memphis, and especially in the black community, there's this automatic assumption that white boys can't be dangerous. People see the skin color and think soft target instead of recognizing the person underneath. That's exactly what happened with White Grape. Even though he was putting in work for Showa Gang, even though he was willing to ride for his homies, a lot of people in the streets didn't take him serious. They saw a white boy and thought he was an easy lick. White Grape eventually got initiated into the Grape Street Crips while still being part of Showa Gang. The initiation was brutal. They beat the absolute hell out of him and took pictures that went viral all over Memphis. You could see his face all swollen and bloody, but he took it like a soldier. But should have been enough to prove he was really about that life, but apparently it wasn't. Here's where Revere thing went wrong for White Grape. One day, he was out in the streets, handling business, when some dudes decided to test him. They saw a white boy with a gun and some money and thought it would be an easy robbery. They were dead wrong about the easy part, but they still managed to catch him slipping. According to the streets, these dudes rolled up on White Grape and immediately got physical. One of them pistol-hipped him with his own gun, beating him down while the others went through his pockets. They took his strap, his money, everything. But here's the crazy part. Somebody was recording the whole thing. The video shows White Grape getting completely violated. These dudes weren't just robbing him, they were humiliating him. They knew he was Showa Gang. They knew he was supposed to be a shooter, and they wanted to embarrass him and his whole crew. They pistol-hipped him with his own gun, talking trash the whole time, making sure everyone could see that they just robbed one of Pooh Shiesty's soldiers. When that video hit the streets, it spread like wildfire. In Memphis, your reputation is everything. If you get caught lacking like that, especially on camera, it reflects on your whole crew. People started questioning Choppa's credibility. How are you going to have a white boy in your gang who can't even protect himself? How are you going to call yourself killers when your own member getting robbed and beaten with his own gun? The disrespect was unreal. People were clowning White Grape, saying he should have never been in the gang in the first place. They were saying Showa Gang was getting soft, letting anybody join just because they needed numbers. The video was being shared everywhere. Instagram, Facebook, group chats, and every time it got shared, it made Showa Gang look weaker. When Pooh Shiesty found out about the robbery and saw that video, he was heated beyond belief. This wasn't just about White Grape getting robbed. This was about the reputation of his entire organization. In the streets, perception is reality. And the perception was that Showa Gang was weak enough to let their own members get violated on camera. Pa had to make a decision, and he made it quick. White Grape had to go. Interview.8.31/8.39. The fact that he had been faithful was irrelevant. The fact that he had previously worked was irrelevant. He was now a burden to the entire crew because he was found to be deficient, and it was all captured on camera. The word was spoken quickly. White Grape was formally
3, 4 in the morning. Look at my phone. I pushed something out on me. I said, look at my phone again. Take me again.
Formally expelled from Showa Gang. They utterly disowned him and severed all contact with him. From their perspective, he had brought disgrace on the company, and there was no turning back. The streets operate in this manner. There is a limit to loyalty. Additionally, you are released when you start to become a liability. This must have been catastrophic for White Grape. These weren't just members of his gang. They belonged to his family. He had put everything in danger for Gang Showa. He endured beatings, risked his life, and now they were discarding him because he slipped once. Here's the problem with the streets though. You can never truly escape once you're inside. Despite being expelled from Showa Gang, White Grape remained in Memphis. I still had to live. I still needed to eat. He had more to prove because he was being viewed as weak by everyone. White Grape had to decide what to do after being expelled from Showa Gang. He couldn't simply vanish. He still needed to make it through Memphis. I still needed to earn money. He still had to make his way through the perilous streets that had previously demonstrated their lack of regard for him. He returned to what he knew, which was working hard. Without Chop's protection, White Grape resumed drug sales in an attempt to expand his own business. Now that he was out there alone, and everyone knew he had been disowned by one of the city's most feared squads, this was extremely risky. White Grape was being keenly observed by the streets. Some felt sorry for him because they believed Choa Gang had treated him unfairly. He was viewed by some as a now that he had no backup. He was an easy target, and some people were just waiting to see what he would do. Would he show that he truly cared about that life, or would he crumble under the pressure? White Grape made the decision to prove himself, but it would be his undoing. He was adamant about proving to Memphis that being white did not equate to softness. He was sick of everybody thinking he was incapable of managing himself. Weary of being perceived as weak, weary of being treated with contempt due to the color of his skin. Ironically, White Grape's inability to manage himself wasn't his main issue. It was how other people saw him. He had previously demonstrated his ability to work hard and his willingness to take chances for his team. However, in a city like Memphis, where racial stereotypes are pervasive and reputation is crucial, white tragedy will eventually result from Grape's will to prove himself. Another set of guys decided to put him to the test, as he was out working hard to restore his reputation in his bank account. However, White Grape was prepared this time. Some cats from West Memphis reportedly pulled up while White Grape was in Van Gumpton, attempting to sell drugs. They were attempting to con him with fake money. Things quickly became heated when White Grape discovered the money was fraudulent. Now, this might have simply been a disagreement, or perhaps a fight in a typical circumstance. However, White Grape needed to demonstrate something. Due of his race, he had previously been robbed, humiliated on TV, expelled from his group, and treated disrespectfully. He was determined not to allow it to occur once more. Because he was white, White Grape perceived these guys' attempts to con him with fictitious money as another attempt to take advantage of him. He believed that they were testing him in the same way as the last group, believing that his skin tone made him an easy target. However, he was prepared to prove them wrong this time. The scenario rapidly got worse. With his revolver drawn, White Grape opened fire. White Grape was charged with murder after one of the West Memphis guys was slain. His life ended abruptly. After being expelled from the Choa Gang, he became a murder suspect. He felt the need to demonstrate that he wasn't weak. The absurd thing is that if people had simply respected White Grape from the start, the entire scenario could have been prevented. If Choa Gang had supported him following the heists, the streets would have evaluated him based on his behavior rather than the color of his skin. Perhaps that individual would still be alive today, if society hadn't made him feel like he had to prove his toughness all the time. Let's be honest about what actually transpired in this situation. In the end, the White Grape narrative is about racism and how it impacts everyone, even on the streets. We frequently discuss how white people portray black people as dangerous. But we rarely discuss how black people may also portray white people as weak. White. Because he was white, Grape had to deal with people all the time who thought he couldn't control himself. There was always this nagging doubt about whether he was truly interested in that life, even within his own group, and despite his repeated successes. Additionally, Choa Gang promptly let him leave when he was robbed, rather than helping him as it would have helped a black member. Considered if the Big 30 would Pooh Shiesty have thrown them out if Big Scar had been robbed on camera. Most likely not. They would have viewed it as a brief setback from which they could recover. However, the robbery was perceived by some as indication that White Grape didn't belong in that culture since he was white. Everyone engaged is at risk from this kind of thinking. When we draw conclusions about someone based on we put people in circumstances where they feel compelled to overcompensate because of their race. White Grape believed that he had to always demonstrate that he was street enough, scary enough, and tough enough. In the end, such pressure caused him to make a choice that ended both his own life and the life of another. When gunshots start flying, the streets don't give a damn about the hue of your skin. Anybody with a gun, including a white youngster, is equally dangerous. However, White Grape felt that he had to repeatedly demonstrate that due to societal prejudices, and he got into problems because of his urge to prove himself. White Grape is currently accused of murder and may spend the rest of his life behind bars. He felt the need to demonstrate that he wasn't weak, all because people were unable to see past the color of his skin to identify that he was genuinely about that life. Choa Gang, however, has moved on without him. Pushy is facing federal charges for several shootings, which is causing him to cope with his own legal issues. Due to narcotics accusations, the Big 30 are incarcerated. The entire crew is essentially disintegrating. But amid all the confusion, White Grape's tale has been overlooked. The individual he murdered had a family, had a drug deal gone awry, ended the lives of those who loved them. The true tragedy here is that not only what transpired with White Grape, but also with his victim. Fake money and wounded pride cost a life. The entire event demonstrates how harmful street culture can be, particularly when combined with racial preconceptions and the ongoing pressure to prove oneself. White Grape believed he had to murder someone to demonstrate his strength. But all he really demonstrated was that violence breeds more violence. The narrative of White Grape serves as a warning about several topics, including the perils of living on the streets and the pressure to succeed, about the harm that racial prejudices can cause to all parties. Above all, though, it's a tale of how easily everything can come apart when you're living that life. White Grape used to be a well-liked member of one of the most dangerous gangs in Memphis. He was being robbed on camera the following day. He was expelled from the gang a few months later. He is currently accused of murder. The streets can turn against you that quickly. The most depressing aspect is that none of this was necessary. If Choa Gang had been more devoted, if White Grape had left that drug trade, and if people had evaluated him based on his character rather than his skin tone, everyone would be better off today. Rather than attempting to prove a point, however, the streets don't operate like that. Perception is crucial in that universe. Violence is the only way to get respect, and one mistake can cost you everything. White Grape paid the ultimate price after learning that lesson the hard way. What are your thoughts on this tale? Was it incorrect for Choa Gang to expel White Grape? Was it right for him to leave that drug deal? Please let me know in the comments section below. And don't forget to subscribe for more such material. Be careful out there. Until the next time.